Welcome to From Chaos to Compass.
Welcome back to From Chaos to Compass, the podcast that helps businesses move from marketing confusion to confident direction. I'm Evan Mack, and I'm here with Ms. Jennipher Jess, CEO and founder of Mapless Marketing, here to share real strategies and clear insights to help small to mid-sized businesses grow with purpose and measurable results. Today, we're talking about why so many businesses get leads but struggle to grow and how to finally close the gap between marketing and sales. Ms. Jennipher, how are you, my dear?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm well. Good to see you again. A lot of businesses or business owners feel frustrated when the leads are coming in, but the revenue isn't necessarily moving. When you look at that situation, what usually stands out to you first?
Well, in those cases, I do feel, there is a disconnect for people understanding that leads does not necessarily equate to sales, right? So something's happening along the journey of the customer that is interrupting that process to convert, right, from a lead into a sale. And so a lot of times we'll discuss with clients what that funnel looks like and try to bridge any gaps that we're finding as people are going down the funnel.
Where do you see the disconnect begin, though? Is it the messaging, timing, follow-up, clarity, or something differently entirely?
I'd say it could be any one of those things or even a combination of those things. It really does depend on the audience that we're working with. It depends on the business itself, sort of what their sales cycle is like, how long their lead time is, right, into conversion. So those are all things to consider, right? So really understanding sort of the path that people are going in as they come into the funnel. If you're having a lot of people, coming in at the top of the funnel and then leaving, you have to figure out, okay, well, what's going on with our sales strategy? At the beginning of our sales strategy, what are people seeing? How can we change this? What do we want to test? And sort of implement, the true A/B test to see what exactly could be going on there, right? So making sure you have one variable that you're changing. Is it the wording? Is it, like you said, maybe the timing? Is it, any of those components within the messaging or the strategy that you have kind of built behind it? Maybe it's something that's going on with tech, right? So maybe there's a glitch in the system or, so you really do have to work with the team, the sales team, to figure out what's going on, maybe get feedback if you have that split between marketing and sales. For me, typically I work with a lot of business owners, so I work directly with them or their sales team to kind of have those conversations and talk it through to see exactly where we're finding the gap and then working through it with them, depending on the situation. But it could be any one of those things.
Yeah. So Jennipher, what are the signals that a business has maybe a handoff problem between marketing and sales, even if everything looks really strong from the top?
I'd say the biggest one is communication. I'd say that the teams need to work fluidly together. A lot of times I'll work with clients who are like, oh, well, we want to do this promotion and we want it to be great and, everything. And we can do all the work in the world on the marketing side. And then the sales team has no idea what's going on. And it can really hurt a campaign. So just making sure that the teams are working fluidly together and understanding what messaging is going to be promoted and put out there to really help each other, right? So the marketing is there to support the sales team in a lot of ways to help them, have the brochures they need, have the messaging they need, put the promotions out there, get the leads to them, really aid them in being able to then take that lead and run with it. Right. But while telling the same story, so there's no confusion. So I do think that there is sometimes there can be tension between the two, right? Like you can have the sales team like, hey, we're just selling, like that's what we need to do. We don't need to focus on what your job is. But in reality, I do feel that, since in working with teams like this and trying to build that, one voice, one mission, one goal, at the end of the day, both teams do see it and they see how it benefits each other. And at the end of the day, that's what everybody wants, right? The marketing team is there to aid the sales team to really help the bottom line.
Absolutely. So what about you when you evaluate a client's lead flow? What matters most in understanding whether those leads are actually qualified?
Yes, this is an interesting one. So, right now we're finding leads will be coming in, and maybe one client is saying, okay, that they're not responding, or one client saying, we're getting a lot of leads, but maybe it's a factor that we have no control over. So, for example, the salon suite companies that we do business for,
Mhm.
I just got off a call with a client who said, we're getting a lot of people who are freshly out of school, and we don't necessarily need that type of lead. We need experienced salon professionals. So we take a lot of that information when we talk to the clients about how things are performing, what things are looking like on their side, and utilize that in the strategy for the campaign. So, for example, for Google Ads, there's no way for us to really change if it's a more experienced salon professional that we're targeting as opposed to someone freshly out of school, right? Maybe age, but that doesn't necessarily mean that someone's less experienced than, because it could be something that someone that's been doing hair, like say a hair braider for since they were 14,
Yeah.
right? So that's a tough one. And so, just having that conversation with them, and the ultimate resolution for that was to test out changing the messaging, gearing the messaging towards more of a seasoned salon professional, um, and making sure that in the messaging we sort of push that a little
Mhm.
bit further than we normally would, because this client is seeing this. So I think in that sense, it really does depend on, what's happening with the leads, and paying attention to, sort of, that break of, okay, well, we're having these results come in. How do we adjust? How do we pivot the strategy to make sure that, the lead that's coming in is a credible one? And then really building off of that, as we move forward. So say this becomes successful in our A/B test, then moving forward, we would continually use that language, but we would edit sort of how we maybe word it, just to see if we can push it a little bit further.
So what about this? How can the buyer's journey break down without maybe anyone realizing it? What's a simple way businesses can spot these hidden gaps?
Well, I think a lot of times there are different departments doing different roles. So, like, I'm like going back to marketing being separate from sales. And I think it's important that somebody in on the team, either one or both teams, go down the actual journey that the clients are going down to find any gaps that might be happening. It could be tech, it could be a button doesn't work correctly, it could be how much time it takes to get to what the client's looking for. It could be, for example, I won't name the company, but it is a major company that sells things in sort of a warehouse environment.
Tell
If
us,
you,
Jennifer. Tell us who it is.
but I'm big on email marketing, right? And so I get this email from them, and it's very like it's nicely laid out, right? Like it's very organized, and it makes me want to buy something. But when I click on the picture of the shirt that I want to purchase, and it doesn't take me to that shirt,
Right.
I could see that their campaigns and strategy are not going to do well, right?
Mhm.
Because there's that massive gap where, as a marketer, I understand it. So then I go searching for the shirt name, right? But not everyone's going to do that, right? There is going to be gaps that you'll find along the way when you test these journeys out, right? So you want to go through pretty much every journey that you've set up. So if you have a Google ad running, try to trigger that ad through and go through click the link, then go through the path that you're looking to test out, right? What product or service that it is that you're trying to have these people purchase off that ad. And then see what that truly looks like and find any gaps, or maybe there's weird things in the messaging. Maybe it just takes too long to get from click to purchase. Maybe there's not enough information,
Mm.
right? Maybe it's too confusing. So just checking those things along the way can really help figure out what those gaps are and pinpoint where the problem lies.
So Jennipher, sales teams and marketing teams sometimes operate on totally different kind of expectations. So how do you help unify them so everyone is working towards that same outcome?
That's a good one. Definitely go back to communication, right? Communication is a big thing. I think that making sure that everybody is on the same page, right? We have one message, one goal, together, understanding with the sales team, right? Because they're on the ground, they're in it, they know the clients. When you're dealing with sales teams, they get a lot of the feedback that maybe the marketing team doesn't.
Mhm.
And so in working together to make, a fusion between both teams to understand fully what the main goal is priceless to a company. Because when you have both teams working together, communicating exactly what's going on, then at the end of the day, and like client facing, it comes out so much stronger, right? The message you're trying to get across, the sales you're trying to get across. And so we need to make sure that there are no gaps in the team structure, that it's looked at as one. I know that there can be a little bit of animosity maybe sometimes within some organizations between both teams. And I think that really does need to be squashed, because ultimately at the end of the day, both teams are there to help each other, right? Marketing can't market without money from sales, and sales really can't get the word out while making sales from that the marketing team is pushing out there for visibility um, and promotions. So it is a good idea for a lot of companies to bring together both teams, make sure that they're working as one, make sure that the messaging that's being put out there, people are aware of, right? I mean, how many times can you think of being a consumer and asking a sales professional, like, hey, I saw this advertisement
Yep.
that said X, Y, and Z 30% off or whatever. I'm like, oh, we're running that ad. I had no idea,
Yep.
right? So making sure that is eliminated, and moving forward together, by communicating with one another and making sure everyone is on the same page is ideal.
Awesome. So follow up is where a lot of revenue is lost. What does an effective follow up process usually include? Why does it matter more than people think?
Follow up is really important in the sense that it's a good way to continue the journey for a lot of customers that drop off. For example, right now, me and my husband are looking at buying a car. Okay. We're looking to purchase a vehicle, and the follow up of a car salesman is solid, right? They might come in really, really strong. They might give you a few days when you ask, but it just depends on their sales strategy and style. But I will say that, you know, there's a fast moving market right now for the vehicles that we're looking for. And to have that follow up from the salesperson, there's a balance to it, right? You need to find that, is it too pushy? Is it too much? Am I giving her the right information that she's looking for? Or is it, giving her a few days and then following back up with her because we know that she's looking and we've listened to what she's saying,
Mhm.
while being probably a little nervous that maybe we're looking at other places, which we technically are, right? You look around for a car, it's one of the largest purchases that you make, right? Outside of like your home, let's say.
Mhm.
So, in that sense, you really do have to fine tune the balance of follow up. You need to know your target audience. You need to understand where they're coming from. And then you need to know variables within that target audience, right?
Mhm.
Like, say someone maybe who has a full time job and a kid isn't going to be as responsive to someone who, is maybe out of college and like looking for their first car for the first job that they just got hired for that they start in 2 weeks, right? So paying attention to what the target is really telling you, and then be respectful of that, but also understand like, okay, well, maybe giving them guidance towards it too. What I mean by that is, so say I'm like, okay, well, I don't really want to talk about this right now. Like I'm thinking about looking in like a couple weeks. And then for the salesperson to be like, okay, well, would it be okay for me to kind of touch base with you in between that time and now? So that way, I can kind of give you any new information or, update, say the car sold, right?
Mhm.
So those kinds of things I feel like are important in the sales strategy, because if the car did sell, it'll give the salesperson an opportunity to maybe push us towards another vehicle that might work for us. Those are things that I think are missing in today's strategy of follow-up, understanding what the target is really wanting and how they want to follow up. I'll also give another example of the salon suite that we do a lot of marketing for. I do direct a lot of our clients to follow up with them with a phone call and a voicemail, but then also a text. And it might seem like a little bit pushy, but we know the target. We know the target's busy. Somebody's probably doing someone's hair color right now, right? And they might not be able to answer. So sending them a text, be like, hey, I just left you a voicemail. I wanted to send you a text if that's the easiest way for you to get back to me. Here are the suites we have available, and I would love to touch base with you once you're available to chat more about this. Those kinds of things are important, I think, in the follow-up process, is truly understanding where that target's coming from, right? If I'm a busy hairstylist, I'm not going to be able to talk on the phone. So if I don't answer, it might be best to leave me a text. And typically that client base responds to text all day, every day. So, if you're returning a phone call to return back their call and leave them a voicemail, it probably would be best to text them and, get them in the way that they want to be spoken to, the way they want to communicate.
Absolutely. For a business owner listening who feels like they're doing everything right, but still not closing these clients, what's one area worth examining that they might be overlooking?
So for a business owner that's looking, to figure out what's going on, with closing clients, I would say that we would need to look at the sales funnel. And because we know the leads are coming in and, we know that they're coming in through the top of the sales funnel, but it sounds more like it would be towards the bottom if they're not closing the clients. So figuring out another strategy on how to close clients would be the best way to figure out what's going on. Test a new strategy, figure out maybe the messaging is wrong in the closing. Maybe the lead time's too long. Maybe you're giving them, not enough time to make a decision, because it just depends on sort of that sales cycle that you're running. If it's a big purchase, if it's a small purchase, what does that look like, right? Because, a $10 item on Amazon, you have it in your cart, and that cart reminder that you get from a lot of companies is one thing compared to like buying a car, right? So you're going to have a longer lead time or shorter lead time depending, and just trying new things along the way. Maybe it's a follow-up issue. Maybe, you're following up too strong. Maybe you need to follow up stronger. So doing some tests along the way. And, a lot of times, I find that some salespeople will reach out to clients and ask, like, what could I have done differently here? How could I have made this a stronger offer for you? What could I have done in order to make this, work? And so you'd be surprised the information that people will give to you, and then be able to test that out along the way. So I think that's a powerful thing. So making sure that, when you're not closing clients, I wouldn't spread focus all over the strategy, right? Like coming down from the top. But I would definitely focus on, okay, what can I do to change this one thing in this one part of the funnel to make sure like I see whether or not it's working in order to clear that gap.
Awesome. Awesome. And before we close things out, let's leave the people with a compass checkpoint to ensure you're on the right path.
Yes. Okay. For today's compass checkpoint, we ask everyone to take one active lead in your pipeline and walk through the process step by step. So look for any moments where clarity might drop off in your messaging, and see if that's the gap that you need to fix first. So this is a really good one. I think that a lot of people will find a lot of things that they might want to adjust to see if it does help their strategy for marketing or sales.
Awesome. Jennipher, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Awesome. And thank you all for joining us from Chaos to Compass. To learn more about Jennipher Jess and Mapless Marketing, visit maplessmarketing.com. Don't forget to like, leave a review, and subscribe to the show so you don't miss the next episode. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.